Last week, I made a video talking about the MotoGP riders who I think are in danger of losing their MotoGP seats for 2025. Now, let's do the opposite. Let's take a look at the Moto2 riders who could potentially move up to MotoGP for 2025. Like last time, we're going to do this in order of most likely to join to least likely. Of course, it was announced back in Qatar that Fermin Aldeguer would be riding for Ducati in MotoGP for 2025. And since then, he's had some sort of iffy performances. He's had some good ones, like a win in Jerez, but then he's also had a weekend like in Mugello where he missed qualifying and then crashed out, or in Catalonia when he crashed out the lead again. He's currently only 6th in the championship, already 59 points behind first, and he was apparently promised a factory bike which, based on his performances so far, I'm not too sure whether he deserves it. Nevertheless, he is 100% joining MotoGP for 2025, there is no question about that. The next most likely rider to join MotoGP, in my opinion, is Ogura. And to be honest, I think he should already be in MotoGP. He's such a talented rider and he's very intelligent as well. He currently sits 3rd in the championship and he scored a brilliant win in Catalonia and also a 2nd place in France when he started from 17th on the grid. Ogura's racecraft and tyre management is amazing, but his only problem is qualifying. He just can't seem to get anywhere near the top of the grid. Of course, he was the runner-up in the championship in 2022, and he should have won the title really, until he crashed out the last 2 races and sort of bottled it. But then 2023 for him was absolutely ruined by injuries. If he had a good year last year, I'm convinced he would be in MotoGP for this year. However, he switched over to the MT Motorsports team and he seems back to his best. I discussed this in the last video. I think he is a direct replacement for Takaki Nakagami on the LCR Honda next year. Or he could even move to the factory Honda next year. If there's a space for him, he could easily do well on there. In my opinion, Nakagami, he's just a bit old and I think his time is up in MotoGP. And I think next year is the right time for Ogura to be moved up to MotoGP. And I think he'll do really well there. I think he'll give Johan Zarco a good run for his money. Overall, I'd say Ogura has about an 85% chance of joining MotoGP next year. I think there is still a chance that Honda keep Nakagami for next year, but I really hope they don't. I think Ogura should be in that seat next year. The next rider who I think could join MotoGP is Joe Roberts. He's just come off the back of a win in Mugello, so his stock value will be sky high at the moment. And it was his first win since Portimao in 2022. But he has been on a different level this year. I only started watching Moto2 in 2022, but then I went back once and watched an old Moto2 race from 2020. And I remember, Joe Roberts was talked on about on the same level as Jorge Martin, Bastianini and Luca Marini, all who went to MotoGP. Joe Roberts was talked on the same level as them. And it was really interesting to see that his career just sort of stalled for 3 years since then. And at the end of last year, he was fighting for his career. And he managed to save his career really with some really good results at the end of the year, like a 3rd place in India. He then returned to the American racing team for 2024 and him and the team have made a real step up this year. He got 3 2nd place finishes in a row and then most recently a win in Mugello, which leaves him 2nd in the World Championship, only 7 points behind Garcia. Of course, as an American rider, he has naturally been linked with the Trackhouse racing team, the Satellite Aprilia team, which is of course an American team, and I really see this one happening. It'd be great for MotoGP to have an American rider, especially one who's succeeding, and Joe Roberts is doing really well at the moment. I think it just fits for him to move to that Trackhouse team. And also, both Oliveira and Raul Fernandez are out of contract. I see Trackhouse getting rid of one of them to go for Roberts. I think it'd be a move to work out for everybody, and it would help grow MotoGP in the US as well. Of course, we are going into a 4-week break now with Joe Roberts having won the most recent race, so he'll be fresh in everyone's mind. I see Trackhouse snapping him up soon. I'd say there's about a 75% chance of him joining MotoGP. I fancy his chances, just as long as he stays consistent for the rest of the year. The next rider who I think should join MotoGP is Sergio Garcia. Of course, he is leading the World Championship at the moment, and so far this season he's scored 2 wins in USA and France, and he's finished all but 1 race inside the top 4. He's been remarkably consistent so far. And if he keeps up this current form, he definitely deserves a seat in MotoGP. The problem is, unlike Ogura and Joe Roberts, I don't really see where Garcia goes. There isn't a clear path for him. To me, I think the place that makes most sense for him to go is Gas. Of course, in Moto3 he raced with the Gas team and was very successful there. So that is the team I think he is most likely to go to, but I haven't seen any rumours about him going to any team in particular. It's all very up in the air at the moment. He sort of just needs to wait and see where there's space, because nobody's really going for him at the moment. However, if Garcia keeps up his current form and goes on to win the Moto2 World Championship, or even comes close, he will 100% deserve to go on to MotoGP next year. And he's following this off from a very impressive debut season as well. He's a man who just seems to get better with every season he does, and if he keeps winning races, the contract offers will soon start to fly in. At the moment, I'd say there's about 60% chance of him joining MotoGP. Like I said, there isn't a clear space for him to go, and there is still a chance that he drops off in form. I don't think he will though. I think he'll keep up his form, and I think he'll be right in the championship battle come Valencia. Those are all the riders who I think should join MotoGP next year. Now there are a few more who could move up if space arrives, but I'm not too sure if they're good enough. Starting off with Alonso Lopez. This guy definitely has the talent to be in MotoGP, but he is not ready yet. He's far too erratic, he's not smart enough yet, and he just needs to mature a bit more. He needs another year. He's definitely got the speed and the talent to be in MotoGP, but he's far too hot-headed. Last year especially, he got so many silly penalties for just ramming into people in overtakes that just weren't on. And he's not the smartest rider either. We saw in Catalonia where he burnt his tyres out with over half the race distance to go. And he's pretty crash prone as well. I do see him in MotoGP one day though. I remember when he joined the grid in 2022, halfway through the year, and he won 2 races pretty quickly. I assumed that in 2023 he'd be right up there fighting for the championship, but it just didn't happen because he just crashed into too many people and he had a terrible year. And he was completely outshone by Fermin Aldeguer. Lopez bounced back though and won the opening race in Qatar, but then he immediately crashed out of Portugal in the next race, which just sums him up as a rider at the moment. He's a very talented rider. He will get to MotoGP one year, but next year is not that year. He needs another year to mature and be in a championship battle, and just calm down a bit. I'd say a maximum 25% chance of joining MotoGP. Aaron Cannett's in a similar position where he's a good rider who I think will be at MotoGP one day, but I think next year would be a year too early. He finally got his first Moto2 win this year in Portimao, but then he got injured in the very next race in USA, and he's sort of been hampered by that injury since. He's a very fast rider, very talented, but I just don't think we've seen enough from him yet to warrant a MotoGP seat. He's crashed out of the lead far too many times. Like Alonso Lopez, he needs another year in Moto2, see if he can get into a championship battle, and then see if 2026 will be the year where a space arrives. I'd say about 15% chance of Aaron Canet joining MotoGP next year. Both Toby Arbolino and Jake Dixon are very similar in that they had a great year in 2023. They finished 2nd and 3rd in the championship, I believe, and they were Pedro Acosta's only real title contenders for most of the year. And at the start of the year, they were both heavily tipped for a MotoGP seat for next year. However, with the introduction of the Pirelli tyres, they have both suffered a lot as their teams just haven't got it right. Jake Dixon got injured in practice of Qatar, returned in USA, then proceeded to crash out of 3 races in a row. But then he bounced back and scored 3rd place in Catalonia out of nowhere really, showing he is still a very good rider. He's just been shafted by the fact his team haven't got the tyre change correct. And for Jake, that might be his chance at a MotoGP seat gone now, because he's 28, he's not a young rider. He's not exactly that appealing to a MotoGP manufacturer. If I were a boss for a MotoGP team, I'd go for someone a lot younger than Jake Dixon. Unless he goes on to win the title next year, I think his chance at getting a MotoGP seat ever is gone now. Antonio Arbolino finished 2nd in the championship last year, and he's an extremely talented rider, especially in the rain. He looked great in the wet races. And he was strongly linked with a move to Ducati for next year if Fabio Di Giannantonio got dropped. But that didn't happen, and his team have really messed up the tyre changes. His best result so far in a race this year is 7th, which is shocking considering the standards he set last year. And I think any hopes of a MotoGP ride for next year for Arbolino are pretty much gone. Both Jake Dixon and Tony Arbolino, they're not getting a MotoGP seat for 2025. They were maybe considered at the start of the year, but now not a chance. The final man who's been linked with a MotoGP seat is David Alonso. He is dominating Moto3 at the moment. He's won 5 of the 7 races so far, and if he didn't crash in Jerez, he would have won 6. He's fastest in nearly every session, and he is absolutely eating that class for breakfast at the moment. He's such a talented rider who has a bright future ahead of him, and will be in MotoGP one day. But I don't think he should go straight to MotoGP. He needs a few seasons in Moto2 to make the natural progression up. We've seen with the likes of Darren Binder going straight from Moto3 to MotoGP. It's not always the best career move. I mean, Jack Miller's done it and he's washed at 29. Alonso should go to Moto2, spend a year or two in there, win some races there, gain the experience, and then see if maybe 2026 or 2027 he could get a MotoGP seat. I think to go straight to MotoGP would be a step too far for him. But that is everyone who could be in contention of getting a MotoGP seat for next year from Moto2. So what do you guys think? Who do you think will get promoted to MotoGP for 2025? Who deserves it the most? Let me know in the comments below. Now that we've done who's going to leave MotoGP and who's going to join MotoGP, next week I'm planning to upload a video making my official predictions on what I think the MotoGP grid will look like for 2025. So if you want to see that, hit the subscribe button and leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. But with that, I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.